All right, good morning, everyone. We might have some additional people coming in here, but we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started. So thank you for joining our webinar this morning. I'm Phil Herman. I'm a partner here at the Impact Group, and we are joined this morning by the founder of the Impact Group and also the primary author of Appreciology, Tom Speaks. Good morning, Tom.
Morning.
And so today we're going to be talking about what is appreciology, first of all, and then in more detail, what is appreciation? What and how can we learn to practice appreciology or appreciation in our own lives? What does that mean for us as individuals and as leaders? And then getting into more specifics about what are just a few strategies that we can put into practice in our organizations in order to have an impact on others? Lessons learned from appreciology. How can we use that to better our organizations and to better our leadership and to have an impact on the lives of others? That's really what we're going to be getting into with Tom this morning. Tom and I give presentations on appreciology. We give, everything from an hour-long presentation, professional development, to half-day workshops, to full-day workshops, to going back and working with teams over and over and over again for months on end, or like a year-long engagement. And so appreciology has a lot to it, and we have only 30 minutes. So we are scratching the surface on appreciology this morning. Tom, any words of introduction before we jump in here?
Just real excited to share this. Just something that myself, Phil, the rest of the team here, we're really passionate about this. This is about culture. And people, when they talk about culture a lot, culture sometimes gets the idea of it's kind of a fuzzy thing that we sort of do. Culture, we believe, is the foundation. Having a great culture is the foundation for great communication. It's the foundation for trust. It's the foundation for a lot of other things. So that's what we're talking about today. Appreciology really is a mechanism to work on culture.
Fantastic. So let's jump in. Tom, what is appreciology in the first place?
Appreciology, really, in its most basic sense, it's an intentional and systematic use of sincere appreciation to motivate others. Really, the idea is, we've been doing this for a long time, folks, that cultures that have a sense of appreciation thrive. Those that don't. I mean, honest to gosh, we've been doing this for a long time, and that we can say that with confidence. So the idea is, do you have appreciation in your culture? And when you quickly look at it, a lot of people will say, sure, we do. But then you start peeling back the onion a little bit, and do you really? So appreciology is a systematic process in which you begin to instill the sense of appreciation in your team and in your culture.
And I think we sometimes talk about it being both science and art, right? How is it both of those? How is it both science and art?
Well, it's science in that there's a lot of science behind it. It's science in the fact that this is clinically proven, research-based. If cultures that have appreciation, cultures that catch people doing something right, cultures that do these things, people perform better, the retention is higher, they want to be there, all the good stuff. So the science, it has been researched thoroughly. The art is anybody on this call deal with people once in a while? Anybody deal with any people in your lives you're working with? We say this to leaders all the time. Leadership is hard. People are hard. They are complicated. They come with a whole array of things. The art of appreciology, the art of leadership in this circumstance or culture is meeting people where they're at, is understanding what makes people tick. Why do they do what they do? Phil and I will say all the time, you can't make anybody do anything. You got to make them want to do it. That's it. If you're in a situation culture where you're making people do things, they might show up and they might put in a half rear end effort and not do a whole lot or give you. But if people actually want to be there because you sincerely appreciate them and sincerely appreciate the contribution that they're making, it makes all the difference. All the difference. But there has to be a system behind that. There has to be a process because it doesn't just organically happen.
Yeah. Tom, so we've used the word appreciation probably about 15 times already in the first few minutes of this webinar. What is appreciation?
You know, it's so interesting. If we had a group of people here, we ask this, and people will say, very quickly, they'll say, it's gratitude, it's calling somebody out for doing something right. And those are correct. But appreciation at its most fundamental level is being fiercely aware of the blessings we have right now, as opposed to always desiring something else. And it's an easy thing to say, but we live in the United States of America, and thank the Lord for it. But this is a hyper consumer society. We get thousands of advertisements a day that are convincing us that we lack something. If I only had that vacation, I'd be happy, or the perfect body, or the new car, or the whatever. And it's really a lie. I mean, it's out there so you can keep reaching for something you're never supposed to get, and it's unfulfilling. Are you aware of your blessings right now? Are you aware of how lucky we are to be healthy enough to be on this call? So a big piece, and again, as Phil said a moment ago, this isn't an hour presentation. This is a whole series of things to begin to build this. But one of the things we have is one of our biggest foibles as human beings is we don't see things that are going well because there's something very real called a negativity bias. We see things that are going wrong because in an evolutionary sense, that's kept us alive. If we remember bad things so we don't go down there or step off the cliff or get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or do whatever, we remember bad things, but the bad things stick to us like Velcro. The good things slide off like Teflon, man. And so we need to begin to train our minds to see things. And there's kind of a buzz term right now. I'm sure a lot of you heard of it, is neuroplasticity. And it's just the idea that our brain, we can actually change the physical way our brain is shaped and wired. It's crazy. Naturally, our brain is wired to see things negatively because again, it keeps us alive. It keeps us out of danger. It's very primal. If we want to begin to see things that are going well, we have to do things consciously, repeatedly, to begin some new neural pathways in our brain to do that. So it's a real purposeful effort, Phil.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tom, and particularly, and we'll talk about some ways to maybe do that here in just a minute. Before we go there, you talked about seeing the blessings in our lives. And you've shared a story with me before that's helped me. When we think about, sometimes I get so caught up in the to-dos and so caught up on what's on my plate and what I have to be focused on that I can feel either overwhelmed or I can be a little bit bummed out. I fall into a little bit of woe is me, and you've shared with me like the example of the story of, imagine you were in a car accident tomorrow. Can you share that with everyone here? Because that, as tough as that is to imagine, this really drives home an important point about recognizing the blessings we have in our lives today.
Yeah, it's just this is kind of tough because I say this, if anybody in this call has experienced a difficult accident or something, I want to be respectful of that. But just using an example though, that if one of us was driving home tonight and there was a very bad accident, we were hurt very badly. Let's say you're in the hospital and you make it, a miracle of miracles, but you are really, really in a bad spot. And the doctor says, you know what? You might make it. You might make it back to your former functionality. And you go through a full year of the emotional, physical pain. It's very, very difficult. But miracle of miracles, a year later, you've regained your former functionality. Your prayers are answered. You've regained it. It's astonishing that this has happened. What a wonderful thing. Are we aware that we have that functionality right now? Are we aware that the mobility we have or whatever blessings we have right now? That fierce awareness is important. Now, there's something that's fascinating, and this part too, Phil, is just being aware. Human beings are seldom in the present. And what do I mean by that? Gosh, we've been on this call for 9 minutes. I'll bet most of the participants here, while we've been on while we're doing this webinar, I'll bet half of you you were thinking about lunch. You're thinking about what you did last night, and that's okay because that's what human beings, that's what we do. We time travel all the time. How often are we actually present? How often are we actually where we are? Joy exists in the present. Most of the time, as Phil was saying, most of the time we're worried about what's that thing I have to do tomorrow? What's that thing that happened last week? We actually have to be present. One of the things, my wife worked hospice for years, and she's a pretty remarkable person. And she's been with a lot of people as they've passed. And one of the things that people will say as they're passing is that this is a common refrain. I wish I had allowed myself to be happy. I wish I had actually been present in my own life. And wrap your mind around that. I mean, you ever driven somewhere You've driven somewhere and you pull into the parking lot and you say to yourself, how did I get here? I mean, I navigated a bunch of traffic lights. I was on a highway. I have no recollection of driving here because our mind is elsewhere. Gang, don't get to the end of your days and ask yourself, how did I get here? I missed it. I mean, it's the little things that appreciation, it zeroes you in on. Look, at the end of the day, it's the walk in the park with your grandchild. It's having a nice experience with somebody else. It's seeing a sunset. It's these little things aren't little. That's life. But the reality is, if we don't have a tool, if we don't have a system, if we don't have a method to intentionally notice these things, you don't notice it. So a lot of this, Phil, is just that. It's just a real fierce intentionality about noticing the blessings.
And I love what you're saying there. It's so important for us to recognize as individuals and as leaders that appreciation and appreciology can have a huge impact on our organizations, but it starts with us. And it starts with controlling our own thoughts. And you had started to talk there about neuroplasticity for a moment, and that there are actually ways, behaviors that we can shape or rewire our brains to see not only the positive, but actually to have our brains be searching for things that we are grateful for or appreciate in life, and that's a big part of it beginning from inside us. And tell us more about that.
Well, we would argue a huge piece of leadership is, first of all, being aware of the good things that are happening around you. And the second part is then being able to appreciate those folks. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick story here. And we really advocate everybody check this out on your own. There's a story called the Magic Coffee Table. It's actually online. It's the Magic Coffee Table. Very quickly. And in the story, you have there's a young man and a young woman. They moved in together. They're probably about 25 years old. And they've clearly moved in together about a month before. And the young man is watching television. The young woman walks in, and the young woman says, "I'm out. I'm done. I did not sign up for this to clean up after you all the time. This is not why we moved in together. I'm out." And the young man says, "Hold on. It's gonna be okay. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine." She says, "How? How is it fine?" He says, "Well, follow me." They go in the laundry room, and there's this plastic basket. He says the craziest thing happened. After you moved in, when I put dirty clothes into this basket, the next day they end up on our bed folded. I'm not sure what's happening. I didn't want to jinx it, so I haven't said anything about it. And she says, "You are out of your mind." He says, "That's not all." She says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, follow me." They go in the living room, and there's a magic coffee table. And so there's this coffee table, and he says, "This is a magic coffee table." She says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, at night, I will stack this thing a foot high with pizza boxes and wrappers and tissues. I really have pushed it a couple nights. And when I wake up in the morning, this thing is cleared off. It's a magic coffee table." And she says, "You are out of your mind." The scene changes. It's the young man, and he's standing there. There's two police officers in the same living room. And the young man says, "No, no, no. She wouldn't have left me. She must have fallen on the magic coffee table and she disappeared." And then the female police officer says, "You're crazy." And the male police officer says, "No, I've got the same coffee table." This is a silly story. We'll tell this to a crew, and everybody chuckles. And then we'll say we're talking to your school districts, your board of development disabilities. Let's say it's ABC school district. We then say to the crew, "How many magic coffee tables do you have at ABC school district? How many magic coffee tables?" Because I'll tell you what, around here, the paychecks just pay themselves. The offices just clean themselves, right? The tech just works. Scheduling just happens. Transportation just happens on its own. It just happens, right? It's magic. And it's so fun to see light bulbs go off. Like, no, it's not magic. You are surrounded by thoughtful, intelligent, intentional people that are doing a great job all the time. And because it's working, wrap your mind around this. Because it's working, we don't even notice. So what Phil is talking about, begin to retrain our brain. There's one thing we do, Phil. It's called a positive actions log. And I'd like to talk about that for a second, just the idea for 10 days. So well, again, there's a whole system, there's different things we can do, but one is what we task people to do is to catch 10 people a day for 10 days doing something right. So can you actually go out of your way to catch people doing something right? And it's fascinating because people will think, "Oh my gosh, 10 in a day, I couldn't possibly. There's not, look, man, if you have your eyes open, you're going to get 10 in the first hour. Because we're not talking about heroic. We're talking if Phil and I have a cardiac arrest and if we go down and somebody in this call calls 911, thank you. I appreciate that. That's awesome. But that's heroic. We're talking about, let's say tomorrow on Friday, you need a document in your email at noon. And at noon tomorrow, I should say 11:30 tomorrow, you get exactly what you need in your email. Nothing more, nothing less. You get exactly what you need. Most folks, when you get what you need, they miss it. I got what I needed. I'm moving on. What we're suggesting you do is take notice, like, oh my gosh, I got what I needed, and then actually to be aware enough of that to call somebody else. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you getting me on time. And so you begin to do this. And what happens, Bill, after 10 days, you notice a couple of things. The first thing you notice is you have favorites. We all do. And this, in a form of appreciation, there are people you're appreciating all the time, and there are people you are never appreciating for a variety of reasons. But the reality is that is perceived by others as favoritism, is perceived by others as a lot of different things, and it causes a lot of trouble. Are you even aware of who you're praising? The second thing you'll notice, and I want you to think on this call, everybody, just take a moment to think about who are the really wonderful people in your life, whether it's professional or personal. These people they're just there. You can just count on, this is from a personal sense, this is a grandparent or someone who's always there to provide child support. And this is a neighbor who's always willing to help. At work, this is maybe an administrative assistant who just always is thinking ahead and making sure you have what you need, or somebody that's handling clients and is doing a wonderful job, or they're always there for the kids. Here's the thing. We have rock stars in our life that are so steady and so reliable and so stinking amazing that they're invisible to us. Wrap your mind around that for a second. Because we're dealing with the problem stuff all day long, those people need praise. Those people, we believe appreciation is the glue, man. So what is your process to begin to see this? So after those 10 days, you're going to notice, like, holy smokes, I haven't, these people are amazing. We need to do something. We need to be more aware of that. So a part of this, Phil, is there's different tools and different methods you can do to begin to look for things, because it's crazy. We are conditioned to look for certain things, and that's the neuroplasticity. We see certain things. If you ever played that game, like find something red or blue, or maybe even better, have you ever bought a new type of car? When you buy that new type of car, all of a sudden you see that model of car everywhere. You didn't even notice it before, but you're looking for it, so you see it. So again, with the whole appreciology methodology, there's many different ways, but you need to begin as a leader to train yourself to see things. And when it really gets cooking is when your staff begins to rewire their brains to see the things. Because I think what they're going to find, Phil and I, our crew finds, there's a lot of stuff to be appreciative for, but we got to be trained to see it.
Tom, I know that there's another challenge we often give individuals when we're talking with them about appreciation, and it's been probably the most impactful experience that I've had for rewiring my own brain. And I've done it in different ways and different methods over the years. But will you talk about the appreciation journal? We talked about the appreciation log: 10 people doing 10 things right, or finding 10 people doing something right. That's the appreciation log. Talk to us for just a minute about the appreciation journal. It's been so impactful for me.
Well, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It's really it's kind of an old school idea, but it's effective, and it's rooted in the idea that we become what we think all day long. We become what we think all day long, and in the essence, I think we're spiritual beings in a much, much larger sense. But as far as right now and the rest, we become what we think. And are you aware of the thoughts you think? Are you aware of what's going on in your mind? And if we become what we think all day long, how are we rooting ourselves in the good stuff? And we've been preaching for a long time an appreciation journal. And we meet a lot of people that do these already, and that's wonderful. A lot of people also have never heard of it. What we'd like you to do at night before you go to bed, take a moment, grab a little journal. before you go to bed, and for Pete's sakes, don't be scrolling before bed. This is not good for you. So the idea is you're actually focusing on something, but focus, what are you grateful for? And actually to write down, I am grateful for my spouse of 24 years. I'm grateful for my faith. I'm grateful for my home. I'm grateful for my pets. I'm grateful. I don't know. What are you grateful for? To write that down. And here's a warning that actually Phil and I have ESP superpowers. We will know if in your journal, if you write, I am grateful for, and then you use ditto marks, we'll know it and we're coming after you. For Pete's sakes, man, if you're writing in your journal, actually write out, I am grateful for each time. It's a part of the exercise, right? It gets it in your brain. And here's the piece too, I want you to think about is we want you to think actually to feel that appreciation. What I mean by that is actually, rather than to say, I'm grateful for my daughter, the example I use is my daughter is 15 and I'm biased, but she's a really super kid. When I come home at night, she gets up and gives dad a hug. I don't know how much longer that's going to last as a teenager, but it's like sunshine on my heart every time it happens. So I think when I'm appreciative for Addie, I sit in that for a second, how appreciative I am for her. Then you go to bed. A lot of us use this as our alarm clock in the morning. Danger, danger, Will Robinson, man. If you're waking up in the morning, understand that they sell negativity. The ominous they. There's a strategy called engage and enrage. If you get up in the morning and you start scrolling, or if you're reactive, you start listening to or responding to texts or emails, you're already going in a bad direction. We become what we think all day long. So wake up, hit wake up, put your phone down, get out your journal. I'm so grateful for my family. I'm so grateful for my colleagues. At the Impact Group, I'm so grateful to serve school districts and people with developmental disabilities and park districts. What an honor that is. I'm so grateful for, there's something about it. It rewires your brain. I mean, Phil and I, we've had people that come up at a conference, they'll say, guys, you won't remember. You spoke at this particular thing a while back. I did that appreciation journal thing. Changed my life. So you guys do with this what you will. There's something so simple about this. It just rewires the way you're seeing the day. And also, here's the crazy part. You begin to search for things to put in your journal. You begin to see things that you wouldn't have seen before. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to mention that today in my journal.
Yeah, that part is so powerful. What you just said, that you begin to see things. My first experience with this was years ago when I began sharing hashtag 3 gratitudes on social media during the month of November, the month where we pause to give thanks. I started on November 1st, and every day that month I would share hashtag 3 gratitudes, 3 things that I was grateful for. It's very similar to the concept of an appreciation journal, and what I began to realize is after 5, 6, 7 days, 10 days in, my mind was constantly scanning the world that I was thinking of things that I'm grateful for, and I was finding them because my mind began to shift. I began to see the world through the lens of what am I grateful for, as opposed to what's bothering me, or what am I worried about, or what do I have to do next. And there's all kind. When we talk about the science, there's all sorts of science about that, about studies that show the long-term impact of that stays with us for months and months and months, even after the practice stops. It is truly the neuroplasticity, or the rewiring of the brain. So it's so powerful, the gratitude journal or appreciation journal. So we've talked about multiple things that we can do individually. You gave also the example of the appreciation log, which starts to talk about some of the strategies externally. We have about 7 minutes left in the time we have remaining. Can you share with us some strategies that can be put into place, behaviors that can be put into place that begin to have an impact on us as leaders within our organizations, and how can we impact others through the practice of appreciation?
Yeah, I mean, there's the challenge of 6 minutes left is in Phil and I and the rest of my crew, honest to gosh, we could talk about this for 4 hours because it's all good stuff. Really, at a short term, one as big as behavioral expectations. As leaders, we're not allowed to hold accountable, we're not allowed to hold people accountable for behaviors unless the behaviors we desire are crystal clear. How do you want your crew to act? How do you want them to treat one another? We are big fans of Brene Brown here. Her idea of, to be clear is to be kind, to be unclear is unkind. So are you very, very clear? Do you have systematic processes in place where people are catching each other doing something right? What we want to get across in these last minutes is you have to have a process. you have to have a process. And something that's fascinating about this is if we have a whole group of people, we'll say everybody here who thinks appreciation is important. Almost 100% of people raise their hands. Awesome. Great. And the next question we'll ask is who here takes a compliment well? Who here is comfortable getting a compliment? Probably if you have 100 people, 2 people will raise their hands. And they'll say things like, I'm very uncomfortable. I will say, why? Why don't you like getting compliments? I don't get them often. It's uncomfortable. I don't feel I deserve them. Low self-esteem. This is our favorite. If somebody gives you a compliment, your first thing you think of is, what do you want? You're angling for something. Where we're going with this is if people have a difficult time receiving appreciation, at some subconscious level, they have a difficult time giving it because they feel like they're putting people in a weird spot. What we found is it seems it's crazy. Universally, people think, yes, appreciation is important. You do employee reviews. You talk to people why they stay or why they leave. Appreciation, cool. When you actually look at people doing it, they don't do it because they don't know how. It's uncomfortable. They don't know how. So a big part of appreciology, Phil, and we can't possibly get into it, is teaching those systems. It's teaching people how to catch people doing something right. It's teaching people about the power of the small things. It's teaching people about, how do we specifically, when you catch someone doing something right, you're specific, it's immediate, it's consistent. There are systems for all this, but like anyone else that's a manager on this or a leader, a big organization has to have systems. And if you want to have a great culture, you have to have a system. I mean, think about this. If you guys ever walked into a place, you walk in the front door and it's positive. I mean, it's positive. It's whether it's a school or a restaurant or a theme park or a business, it's positive. Well, the question Phil and I would ask folks is that an accident? Does everybody just show up and it's positive? And the answer is no. There's an intentional effort by leadership to define the culture we want. We communicate the culture we want, and then we reward and reinforce it like crazy. And appreciology is a mechanism to do that. If you don't have a mechanism, it is not going to organically occur. So, Phil, that's a huge question. I appreciate the question. There's 1,000 different tactics. It requires that systematic effort.
And right before we wrap up, Tom, can you talk to us a little bit about stinkers? Because sometimes people simply just aren't going along with this concept of appreciology.
I would actually like to do an entire webinar on stinkers. Okay, so very, very quickly, just any culture. Gosh, we have 2 minutes. Any culture.
Yeah, watch for that webinar coming soon. Stinkers, stinker webinar.
You got negative people. It's okay. 10% of the people want to be they are on board, man. 10% are stinkers. We don't care what you do, they're going to be negative. You as leaders are fighting for the 80% in the middle. And just be aware of the stinkers and the fact that if you're going in a positive direction as an organization, the stinkers get worse. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating and people you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're getting, that's the way they're wired, man. So I guess what Phil and I would say in the leadership appreciology sense, don't allow the people that you know are profoundly negative to throw nails under your tires when you try to do something positive. We always this is a fun one. People will there'll be a department potluck at some place we're working with, and Sally doesn't come to the potluck, and everybody's been out of shape because Sally didn't come to the potluck. Look, gang, Sally doesn't have to come to the potluck. It's her loss, man. So metaphorically, think about some of the positive things you do, and we get all bent out of shape because so-and-so's not on board. Of course they're not on board. Move on. As a leader, if you are waiting for the really negative people to like things and to be happy to fill your cup, that's a lonely place. So appreciation it takes time. Appreciation and culture is hard. But we would suggest, and Phil, I think Phil is a master at creating great cultures. Culture, it takes time, it takes intentionality, it takes effort, but man, the fruit it is worth the effort. I mean, Phil, you're I think one of the best in the business in the school world at creating a great culture.
Well, thanks for that, Tom. And maybe that's another webinar for another day as well. We are coming right on up at 10 o'clock and wrapping up. Any closing words for our guests here on the webinar today?
Just the final words I'm going to reiterate. If you want a great culture, It requires intentionality, thought, effort, and commitment. Great culture takes time. And if anybody's interested, we've really been quite successful working in a variety of organizations, whether it's a real positive place you want to make better, or frankly, there are places where there's real pockets of negativity where we have a real specialization and kind of getting in there, turning things around and moving it. So if culture is something that's important to you, we would be honored at the Impact Group to work with you and that culture. And I'd also be remiss to not say that we also do strategic planning. We also are the outsourced communications firm for a lot of entities, and we do crisis communication as well. When bad things happen, I'm afraid people know that they can call us and we can help them out. So we'd be honored to help in any of those ways. Phil?
Yeah, if you can't tell, we are sincerely passionate about using appreciation to have a positive impact on the lives that we work with, and ultimately teaching others how to do the same. So we would love to continue the deeper dialogue with any of you. Feel free to reach out to us if you'd like to talk about that further. Again, thanks for tuning into the webinar. Tom, thank you so much for sharing your enthusiasm, your passion, and all your knowledge in this area with each of us this morning. Thanks.
Phil, thank you for the great job hosting. So appreciate it.
Have a great day, everyone.
Take care, guys.